Hello, everyone. Welcome to Inside the Americas. Here's a look at what's coming up in today's show. Iran is scrambling to lock in guarantees from the EU after the U.S. pulled out of the nuclear deal. We'll meet a former American hostage in Iran who says Trump's move was the wrong one. Then Argentina was once called the comeback kid of the global economy, but it's now negotiating to get a $30 billion flexible credit line from the IMF. And as royal wedding fever continues to rise, we'll take a closer look at American actress Meghan Markle, Prince Harry's new bride-to-be. I'm Jeannie Godula. First, the Iranian foreign minister was in Brussels this week, scrambling to try and get some sort of guarantee from the European Union to keep the nuclear agreement alive. Jawad Zarif sat down with top EU diplomats 1 week after U.S. President Donald Trump pulled out of the deal. People around the world have criticized that move, including a former U.S. hostage in Iran, John Limbert. Our correspondents met up with the former diplomat in Washington.
John Limbert met his wife Parvaneh in Iran, where he was working as a professor. About 10 years later, in 1979, Limbert began his career as a diplomat when the American embassy in Tehran was attacked. He and 51 other Americans were held hostage for over a year.
This was one of the first sentences I ever learned in Persian, which was "Qan tu qandune," which means the sugar is in the sugar bowl.
That's good. At least you can speak.
Today, the former diplomat, who's passionate about Persian civilization, regrets the US's withdrawal from the Iran nuclear accord.
Well, I was very disappointed to see that because the agreement represented a symbol to me that maybe after 34, 35 years, things were finally changing and that the two sides could actually speak to each other and listen to each other rather than shouting at each other.
For John Limbert, there's no doubt in his mind that President Trump wanted to rip up Barack Obama's legacy.
He comes along and he has to say, well, this agreement was made by Obama, so it had to be a bad agreement. Because I'm the world's greatest negotiator, I will make a better agreement.
It's sad news for a country they cherish so much. Here in this office, numerous souvenirs of Iran are assembled, like this collage made by Parvaneh while awaiting her husband's release.
The only thing is for the Iranian people. We don't want a war, we don't want anything. This is a really sad moment.
The American hostage crisis, which took place under Jimmy Carter's presidency, poisoned relations between Tehran and Washington for decades, and it continues to do so.
The real victims of this event was not us. I mean, it was difficult for us, it was difficult for our families in particular, but it was really the Iranians.
John and his wife hope that Europe will manage to keep the nuclear deal afloat to prevent further isolation of the Iranian people.
Our number of the week is 30 billion. That's for the $30 billion Argentina needs to stay out of a full-blown economic crisis. Argentina was once called the comeback kid of the global economy, and its business-friendly president was praised as the man to put the country on the right track to a brighter financial future. But last week, Argentina found its currency at an all-time low, pushing the treasury minister to try and strike a deal with the International Monetary Fund. Erin Ogunkay has the details.
A rocky week for the Argentine peso. Until now, the worst performing currency of the year, it has gained ground just days after hitting new lows against the dollar. This comes after the central bank auctioned $25 billion in short-term securities and hiked interest rates to 40%. The Treasury Minister admitted recent turbulence is likely to result in diminished growth, though he implied inflation will fall.
Of course, we recognize the incident we've been through over the past few days has an impact on May's inflation rate. It will have an effect, but we think the path of descending inflation isn't going to stop.
President Mauricio Macri's government has struggled to reduce inflation, which led many foreign investors to turn to the dollar, in turn causing the peso to plummet. As a result, thousands of Argentinians are struggling to pay for basic goods. And experts say inflation is unlikely to fall below 20% this year. In an effort to prevent a full-blown economic crisis, President Macri turned to the International Monetary Fund for a loan. The government reportedly needs at least $30 billion from the Washington-based organization.
We will have to wait about 6 weeks to know what awaits us. This is a standby loan of between 12 and 36 months with between 3 and 6 years to repay, with conditions.
Macri's decision sent thousands of people into the streets to protest the IMF loans. Reliance on the international organization brings back bad memories for many Argentinians.
The government has asked the International Monetary Fund for help, which for us represents a return to the past. And this deal will come with cuts to our wages, to our conventions, to our rights.
Many blame the International Monetary Fund for Argentina's 2001 economic crisis, when the country defaulted on its debt to the IMF and international creditors. In response, the government imposed strict restrictions, which caused social and economic chaos.
The latest craze in the food industry is the so-called clean meat. It's real biological meat, but rather than being harvested from the bodies of living animals, it's grown from cultured cells inside a lab. And in Silicon Valley, several startups are looking into all kinds of alternatives to traditional meat that are both more ethical and better for the environment.
It's almost impossible to tell that this juicy burger is actually vegetarian.
It tastes just like a burger. It feels good that once, every now and then, just have, something without meat that's still tasty.
In this meat-centric restaurant in downtown San Francisco, the vegetarian Impossible Burger earned its spot on the menu around a year ago.
Protein is meat, whether it's plant-based or animal-based. I still consider it meat. Cooking an Impossible Burger is similar to cooking a regular burger. There's natural fats from the coconut.
The company behind this burger has already sold almost 4 million of them and isn't the only one to cash in on the trend for alternative proteins.
On the one hand, plant-based foods are promising. They can offer us a lower greenhouse gas alternative, which is better for the climate. They can potentially be more healthful for some consumers. On the other hand, they're ultimately a very processed food made in a factory setting. And
this Bay Area startup manufactures mayonnaise made from yellow peas and scrambled eggs made from mung beans. As well as making egg alternative products, Just's researchers are also working on cell farming.
So if I was a cow, I would take a cell from my body and I would feed that cell nutrients. We find those nutrients in plants, and in the same way that you might brew beer, we put those cells together in a fermenter, and they multiply many times, and at the end product we have ground beef.
But meat grown in a lab is still in the research stage and several years away from being available in supermarkets or restaurants.
Well, the royal wedding is upon us, and LA is getting set to send all of its love with a giant greeting card for Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. All this week, well-wishers on Hollywood Boulevard got a chance to sign the big congrats set up in front of the historic Chinese Theater. Markle will be leaving her hometown of LA and her acting career behind her, but she and her family have already been caught up in Britain's notorious tabloid speculation. Kensington Palace has so far made no comment on reports that Markle's American father will now miss the royal wedding due to a heart operation. That's the latest twist in the will he or won't he be there that started with a series of staged paparazzi photos put together by Meghan's half-sister. But the happy couple seem determined not to let the scandal ruin the wedding of a prince and his very unconventional bride.
From California girl to beloved British Duchess.
Meghan, she looks beautiful.
There's certainly a feel-good factor, and with Meghan on the scene, even more so.
Meghan Markle won Prince Harry's heart, but who is the American woman set to become the newest member of the British royal family? Before announcing their engagement, Markle was best known as a television actor and as a philanthropist, passionate about causes such as women's rights and access to clean water. She isn't the first American to marry a royal, but she is an unconventional bride for a British prince.
biracial. She's divorced. Her great-great-great-grandfather was a slave, lived in Georgia. And so this is a story of literally upward mobility.
She was born Rachel Meghan Markle on August 4th, 1981 in Los Angeles and loved performing from a young age. Before her relationship with Prince Harry made her one of the most recognizable faces on the planet, Markle worked hard to achieve fame on her own. She studied theater and international relations at university and landed her first TV role in 2002. She said there were challenges to navigating Hollywood as a biracial actress, but Markle was able to carve out her own career path.
Meghan had a couple of big breaks, really. Her main one, of course, is 2011 when she got her role as Rachel Zane on Suits, something that she was working at when she met Prince Harry.
Markle and Prince Harry first met on a blind date in early July 2016, set up by a mutual friend. Harry says it was love at first sight and that they bonded over their passion for good causes. Then in November 2017, Markle and Prince Harry revealed that they had secretly gotten engaged. Calling it a new chapter in her life, she has since left acting roles behind and moved to the United Kingdom. After the much-anticipated wedding, Markle says she intends to focus on charity work and her new role as a member of the royal family.
Well, that's all the time we have for this edition of Inside the Americas. We'll see you again next week for all the news from north to south.